Glory to Jesus Christ. Glory forever. Hey, this is Father Anthony Perkins, and that voice there is the Deacon Timothy Kelleher, and I'm here on my back porch in Hartwell, Georgia. My dog's going crazy in the background, so he may join us at different times during the interview and no, it's not a podcast, is it? And I hope things are going well in your world. They're good here. You know, that great canon yesterday was just amazing. It's always exactly what I need. I love the Bible. I love music. And I'm in need of repentance. So those three things, you put them into one package. And then repeat for 2.5 hours. Awesome.
Whoever was doing the camera work yesterday from the cathedral in Boundbrook was doing it. I mean, seriously, did a tremendous job. I mean,
wonderful.
I don't know if anybody noticed that. The way it very subtly sort of drifted and moved up and down, and really it was very instinctive, and compliments.
And that's, as our audience will find out in a second, that's not just an uninformed opinion, which we can all have, and they're valuable. This is someone who's...
I got plenty of it.
You got plenty. Yeah, we got... All right, well, before we start talking about stuff like that and even more interesting things, right, let's start with our 3 deep breaths, all right? I'm going to try something new here. This is like a bad use of technology. There's a good way to do this, I'm sure. But what I miss out on when we're starting out with these 3 deep breaths is I have not learned how to breathe in and talk at the same time. Right, I haven't really mastered that yet. You know, it doesn't sound very peaceful. So, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. You know, you can do it. Right, yeah. So what I did is I recorded it. So let's do these 3 deep breaths together, and as we breathe in, we're going to say the first half of the Jesus prayer, and as we breathe out, we're going to say the second half, and we're going to allow this pace and the physiology of the deep breaths to take us into a peaceful place.
Slow breath in, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God. Hold. Slow breath out. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Hold. Slow breath in. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, hold. Slow breath out. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Hold. Slow breath in. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, hold. Slow breath out. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Hold.
Okay, thanks, Doug. We appreciate that.
Who is that guy?
Who is that guy? Right. I tell you what, that has become just a wonderful part of my routine. You know, 5 to 10 minutes of just slow, square breathing, some Psalm Nadi, whether it's the Jesus prayer or, Trisagion. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, sacrifice unto God. It's a broken spirit, whatever it is. And you add the breaths to it, and So, welcome to On the Back Porch with Father Anthony. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, little product price placement from our non-sponsor here. Duncan is not sponsoring that.
Product placement.
There you go.
Brought to you by the Augustine.
Awesome. That's one of the things that, so I listened to just a couple of podcasts, and one of them is Scott Adams, because he studies influence, and so we think about similar things, and looking at how people are manipulated and tribal thinking and things like this. And he does this thing at the beginning of his morning live stream, and everybody takes a sip of coffee together. And what that shows me is that we need ritual. Because I guarantee you, I mean, he studied this. He's like, and he's a secular dude. He has respect for religion, but it doesn't do anything for him, right? But he knows that we need those kinds of things, and these rituals of, go figure, drinking and eating together is, there's a magic to it. There's a magic to a lot of things, right? It's that we're really missing the magic that we took for granted, the magic of being with people that we love and friends, and the magic of face-to-face communication, the handshake, the touch, just being in proximity, doing things that we enjoy. Yeah, so what do we do about that? What are we going to do about that, Deacon?
I don't know. But, I mean, I think we're doing it right now. I made a sort of a half in jest, whole in earnest joke online the other day, which was, never has the mundane seemed so exotic and beautiful. And hope we remember that when this is all over. I'm a little skeptical about that, having gone through 9/11 in New York, but you can still hope. But people talk about how the environment is a wonderful byproduct of all this, and it's cleaning itself up, and the geese are flocking back to the canals of Venice, and there are wild boars walking through the streets of Milan and that kind of thing. I was thinking the same thing about our interior situation. These pure rivers that run through us. This quiet, this desert time is, helping us, whether we like it or not, to pull the garbage out and the trash tires that are stuck in the rocks of our rivers, and all those kind of things. The dirty bottles and this is a complete opportunity. A complete opportunity. This is retreat time. If we can make use of it. I'm not bored. I really am not. I mean, I've read just about every book in the house, and now I was telling a friend of mine that I'm halfway through the cereal boxes, and that I've decided that Raisin Bran is the War and Peace of my shelf. But there's so many things you can do. I've begun my Ukrainian classes online. You can learn a new language. Well, depending upon how long it takes, you can learn about 5 new languages. So there are so many things that you can do, and when you do connect with people, those moments are really are precious. And you really, I've noticed with certain friends of mine that we tend to drop a lot of the funny stuff. We still do it, but a little bit less. Or maybe not less, jabbing each other, but more saying things that, you really mean a lot to me. I really love you. I miss you. So maybe not so much dropping the jabbing, because that would be unnatural, but a lot more appreciative.
Right, yeah. And there are too many people from New York. I mean, I think that's part of their magic, right? Where would you be without? Just kidding.
I know. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's a great point. This is, it is an opportunity, and it's also, an opportunity for us, pastors, and we're all called to that royal priesthood, and 2 components of the royal priesthood, right? Love and worship God, and love and serve your neighbor, and a lot of opportunities for that, and that's something that's not going to go away, because we're going to be cleaning up after this for a long time. And here I'm not just talking about the direct effects, unemployment and damage to the economy. The direct effects is the illness, and that's clear pastoral obligation there. But also, people. It takes a long time to recover from trauma. So, being there for people with the gentle word and sometimes with the teasing, that's part of it, right? One of the things that we're spending time with, you were joking about reading, right? Well, not everybody reads anymore, right? But man, we sure do love our movies and our TV series. And every once in a while, one of my favorite personalities shows up on that big screen. Yeah, you've done some bad things in your life. Goodness gracious.
Oh yeah, I'm a bad man. I'm a bad man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't figure it out. I tend to play bad guys, right? Serial killers, bad cops, uh, maniacs, and I've had like 3 auditions for the role of priests, and I forget about it. It's like crickets. And I even went out and got the nerdy Father Mulcahy glasses for the look, and but and I see the other guys that go in and the guys that get the part, and they're right out of central casting, which is sort of interesting in itself because it gives you a sense that they're looking for a certain type that is in their mind what a priest looks like and behaves like. So I've never gotten even close to playing something like that. So I was thinking about writing an article about kind of parodying the I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. I'm a priest, but I never played one on TV. Something along those lines.
Nice. You have played good guys. You were in. How many days was the missile crisis? Was it? I'm terrible with numbers. 13 days, right?
13 days. Yeah, that was a dream come true. I mean, that was one of those things. I was working on a different HBO movie, and a couple of years before that, and one of the guys in the cast was the grandson of Kenny O'Donnell, who was the character that Kevin Costner plays in 13 Days. Who was his role in the movie is built up because they wanted to give Kevin Costner something to do, but in reality he was like JFK's muscle man right at the White House. He was you had to go through Kenny O'Donnell to get in to see the president. Anyway, this young, also named Kenny O'Donnell, was talking about this project that his father was going to produce called 13 Days. And I was like, oh my God, I got goosebumps. I was like, oh. I didn't want to get my hopes up that I would even be seen for it. Cut to 2 years later, I get a call from my agent saying, you have an audition for a project called 13 Days. And I'm like, 13 days? You mean about the missile crisis? She said, I think so. And I said, you're kidding. What role am I going in for? She said, let me look it up. She's looking through her papers, and she went back. She says, it looks like it's a guy named Ted Sorensen. And I was like, Ted Sorensen? And it was like a double-edged sword right away. It was like, this is the greatest thing, because when I was a kid, I had won this contest in this summer camp thing, kind of, and one of the prizes, you could choose the prizes you won, and I chose the collected speeches of JFK. Nerd much? And so I really memorized the entire inauguration speech. I asked now what your country can do for you. So that was a big deal to me. I would be able to recite that, and so when I got to high school, it wasn't until high school that I learned that JFK did not write that speech himself. It was some guy named Ted Sorensen. So I learned all about Ted Sorensen. I was like, wow, this guy sounds really cool. And then you're learning about his actual role in the missile crisis was huge. Between him and Bobby, they were like the two really main inner sanctum advisors to JFK. So anyway, I go in for the audition, and I'm like nervous as hell. And I'm like, oh boy, I want this so bad, but what are the chances that I'm going to get hired for this? So I go in, and the director and the producers were great. They made it very easy. And I had my own glasses on. They were kind of wire-rimmed. And so during the audition, the director, Roger Donaldson, says he's a New Zealander. So he says, hey, Peter, do me a favor. Give Tim your glasses. Because he had the kind of Ted Sorensen tortoiseshell glasses. Give him your glasses. Let's do the audition again. So I borrow his glasses, and I go home. And it's like, And this is really unusual for these kind of things, for movies, especially that size. It was like 2 days later, I'm at dinner, and the phone rings, and it's my agent. And she says, okay, well, we just got an offer for you on 13 Days. And I was like, what? I could not believe it. And so, long story short, I actually went to New York, because we were in LA at the time, and I spent 2.5 hours at lunch with one of my heroes, Ted Sorensen, sitting face to face with him in a Manhattan East Side restaurant, and it was just amazing,
Wow, that is so cool, and it's a good movie. And seeing you in
It
there,
is really good.
nodding sagely. I mean, you're the guy that knows, right?
Right. Bruce Greenwood said to me one time, he played JFK, he said, boy, you're a great listener. How do you do that? And I was like, I have a lot of time when you don't have so many lines.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Man.
But,
So,
yeah.
so going back to this idea of us going to, Netflix and... On Netflix, it's got to be overloaded or something. I don't know if anyone else is having this problem, but it's buggy on our screen. We never had a problem before. And
oh, really?
Yeah.
It probably is tax heavily.
Yeah.
People just going crazy and things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but, I put up on Facebook, here are the shows that, I watch over and over again, right? And the hope there was that people would share their own, right? I love that because then I'm like, hey, we like the same things, and I've never even heard of that show, right? And so you've got another one to mine.
Right.
But there are some that, it's funny how people are different, right? I'll have same preferences as someone else, and then they'll say, that they love The Office. And I'm like,
right.
huh?
Uh-huh.
I don't. We both speak in English. You say The Office, like the one in Scranton. You mean
I thought I knew you.
You're right. I thought I knew you. Yeah. So, what is it about story that so captivates us? Why do we love that? Why don't we just sit around and sing or look at nature or something?
Well, yeah, but I think story sort of ties all this together. My coming to this professionally, I'll tell you a quick story if you don't mind. I was on my way by bus from New York City to Mexico. I wanted to see in person the whole liberation theology thing. So I had Jesuit contacts in central Mexico and in Central America, and they were pretty heavily involved in that, both on a theoretical and practical level down in Central and South America. So I took the bus for the Greyhound, and I stopped in Berea, Kentucky, to see a really good friend of mine. Born and raised, went to Yale. He's now teaching at Yale. Anyway, he's a good old country boy, and he says to me, "Oh, when you get here, I want to take you out to see a movie. I just love this movie. I know you're going to love it too." And I was like, "What is it?" He said, "It's called Raging Bull." I said, "You mean the Scorsese thing?" He said, Yeah. Have you seen it?" I said, "No, I have no interest." He said, "What do you mean you have no interest?" Look, I grew up around those kind of people, and I'm so tired of that. They're going to glamorize the whole Goomba thing. I said, I lived that my whole life. I don't want it. He said, "Do you trust me?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Just come with me. I'll pay for it." We went, and I was pretty blown away by it. But what really got me at the end, I don't know if you've seen this movie, the screen goes dark after this very heavy-duty, dark movie. Gritty is not the word for it. And on the screen, you see it scrolls, and it's a quotation from John's Gospel. And it's the story of the blind man. And he goes to the authorities. They say, who cured you? Who's this guy? And they're badgering him to confess that it's, in some blasphemous way. And he says, I don't know who it was. All I know is that I was blind, and now I can see. And that it was one of those scales falling from your eyes moment. And I said, this is powerful. This is sacramental, And then it was a very short time before it all began to come together. Jesus didn't get at a chalkboard and go through, how about the teleological suspension of the ethical or things like that. He was like, you want to meet a person, you tell a story. The stories exist at the level of mystery. In mystery in the sense of a relationship with something that's almost unfathomable in an ultimate sense. So you don't get any answers from stories, but you are drawn more deeply into the mystery that is life-giving. And I was like, wow. Parables. Yeah, this is dynamic. This is, in our case, I think in recent times, underutilized, tremendously underutilized. And when you think about all the media that we have today at our disposal, when we think of like TV and religion, we immediately think of Jerry Falwell and these people. And in fact, the original televangelist was Fulton J. Sheen. He was a Catholic bishop who had the number one show in the country on, I think it was CBS, for years. People don't, that's ancient history to most people. But he was beating the Milton Berle show. He was the number one Sunday night show, prime time. And all he had was a chalkboard and a tremendous charisma and enthusiasm, a very bright man. And that was the original televangelist. So, now these media opportunities are just proliferating, and we're making use of one right now. So we've only begun to tap or scratch the surface of the potential here. And stories, to me, is a huge part of that. Because, young people today have tremendous, mind-boggling abilities technologically. But stories, especially when it comes to the incredible treasure of the Bible, those stories. I gave a talk up at Amherst a few years ago, and at the end, somebody asked a question that I actually had never thought of before. And the guy said, "How come there are good stories coming out of Hollywood anymore?" And I thought for a second, and really, the words came out of my mouth. And, I was surprised that they came out of my mouth. And my answer was, because we've stopped reading the Bible. And when they came out, I said, well, to myself, that's not the entire answer, but that's a big, big part of it. You think about all the classic Hollywood movies and TV shows, they all in some ways, or most of them, the classics, reference some aspect of classic Bible stories, the Good Samaritan, the leper, and a lot of these things that we take for granted, Job, and the patience of Job, you say these things, and younger people don't know what you're referring to, in a lot of cases. So to be cut off from not only the Bible, but, the great myths of the West, the Greek mythology, all these things, native, indigenous mythology, these... myth doesn't necessarily mean some made-up story or a fantasy. It really means, in the true etymological, that story that can convey a deeper truth that really can't be articulated directly. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, exactly. So, and we are so hungry for story. That's what part of this is. Yeah, story is entertainment. Okay, I get it. But we're hungry for it. I read a book a few months ago, The Storytelling Animal, I think it was. And, completely secular book, but goes into how, stories touch us at the deepest level. And pulling in the Bible, that's Jordan Peterson. That's what he was doing with his lectures on mostly the Old Testament, right? And he was going through and he's saying, look, I don't, he's not a believer. He's not. He's agnostic. He's like, maybe this is true, maybe it's not, but I know it's true. It's true in the biggest way that he can say something is true, and that is that it is completely useful and necessary, right? That's as far as he can go. Yeah, but that's a long way. And that's something that sometimes when... I think the default position for many of us who have studied theology, when we look at the stories of the Old Testament, especially when we study the Old Testament and we teach the Old Testament, we use it as, we see it all through the light of Christ, of course. So this is messianic, this is that, this is this, and we put it in categories and say, see, it all builds up towards this thing that we're doing now, right? Fantastic use. It's all true, right? But there's something else going on, and that's what you're saying. And this is story as canon, right? Why were these stories preserved? Yes, because they point towards, the economy of salvation and how this works. Yes. Part of that, though, is what it reveals about our psychology, our relations with one another, our relations with God, our need for the, connection to the ineffable. What happens when that connection is broken? All these things, they're crystallized within, the Bible stories and within generally, as you were saying, the canon, right? And hey, in that sense, is there any additional, is our canon, you can have any canon. That's what people will say now. You go to academia and they're like, yeah, but these old stories, they were used for this, that, and the other that we don't like, and therefore we're gonna come up with these new, this new mythology. Well, right. Even someone who's agnostic, like Peterson, who looks at that, they say, no, because those haven't been tested, those haven't been tried. You're just chaos, and you don't know how that's going to speak to our psyche. You don't know what kind of society is going to grow out of that. You think that you're going to correct some of the things that have gone wrong with the old canon. But by trying to undermine the whole canon as such, you're just throwing us into chaos. And we can't take that kind of fundamental change of our understanding, our relationship to the world, to one another. We just can't do it all at once like that. So even if in some kind of sense it was possible and good, you don't play like that. And that's one of the frustrations that I have. Right. With being back in academia, is there's this automatic writing off of anything that's older than, since in my discipline, since the book Designing Social Inquiry by King, Cohane, and Verba, it came out in the 90s. So anything older than that, they didn't understand how to test hypotheses and so on. Like, really? So we're throwing out Weber. We're throwing out, even Gramsci. Really, you're going to get rid of all these guys in favor of what? Yeah. So it's this, this myopia towards tradition.
Yeah, and the lack of history or historical memory or any kind of memory. I was working on a TV movie here in Canada, actually. And we had some downtime. We were in a convertible. I was in the front seat. This young couple that I was kidnapping them in the movie, of course. And the radio's on, and Janis Joplin comes on. It's me and Bobby McGee. So everybody's toe tapping and stuff, and it's great, and the music blasting. And the song ends, and the young woman in the back seat says, "Wow, that was great." I said, "Yeah, I love that song." She goes, "Who was that?" And I wanted to turn around and actually strangle her. I said, "What?" And the guy didn't know either. And the guy was in a popular boy band. Had never heard of Janis Joplin. I was like, this is not that long ago. This isn't this isn't Homer. This isn't not Homer Simpson, but they might know that. But I was like, wow, that's amazing. I felt like suddenly like a fossil, But so when you think about things like the Bible or poetry or even recent classics, it's like, wow, we got a lot of work to do to try and build those bridges. A lot of work.
Right, and it's work that we should do. And one of the another things that I'm playing up Jordan Peterson here. He's got his problems. He's a secular psychologist, but fantastic. But he got millions of people to listen to him talk about the Old Testament on YouTube.
It's amazing.
He sold out auditoriums of people coming to hear him talk about the Old Testament. I'm like, man, I'm lucky if I get 10 people I'm doing it wrong, right?
Yeah. When I went to graduate school, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I said when I was in graduate school in theology, when it came time to take Old Testament, I was like, oh, do I have to? Honestly, because I wasn't, aside from the Psalms and Job and, the prophets, I was like Deuteronomy and Leviticus. I don't know, my God, it's like a root canal. But you get the right teacher who's passionate about this stuff because they know what's really being offered, that can come alive, and it is mind-blowing. The book of Genesis is astonishing. I mean, it's astonishing. Those creation chapters. I mean, it's endlessly fascinating and deep and relevant. Extreme. Nothing is more relevant than some of those stories.
Right. And so we fall in love with the stories. We fall in love with this. And I worry sometimes that then we go back into some kind of weird rut when we're trying to teach it. And we kind of pull all the fun out of it, right? All the things that we fell in love with about it. So letting, as a teacher, what I like to do, look, enthusiasm is contagious, right? And if you tell the story well, they fall in love with the story too, right? And it's fantastic. And there's some people who are born storytellers. One of the things that the South does is that it reverences the slow building up of story, right? I just don't know New York. I don't know New York City. I don't know how they tell stories. But it must be pretty well. That's where Broadway is, right? I mean, Hamilton.
Oh.
Hamilton. This is one of those things. My kids know more about that period of time than I do, because they got every word of the Hamilton musical memorized.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Have you heard this?
That's good.
Now,
I've never seen the show, listened to the score, but that's great news.
Oh yeah. They've got to do more. They're making a movie out of it, and my kids are very happy that they've got the same actors coming to play the parts, because it's very much about, if they ever saw an actual picture of what Hamilton looked like, I think they might be disappointed, but it's so well done. Oh my goodness.
Right.
So taking a story, we don't have to tell the story the same way every time, right? We're not saying, you have to study Plato and you have to read it in the original Greek or else you don't get it, right? The cave only makes sense if you're sitting in the dust of Athens, listening to some guy in a robe say it in ancient Greek.
Right.
No, we update it, but the story of the cave gets told again and again and again, right? New ways,
right.
And you play with a little bit, right, to pull out. So we're not saying that
absolutely.
We're not calling for the stultification of a canon, but a living,
right, Right, adapted to because it lives and it breathes and it's ever relevant. You just have to find ways of adapting it to allow it to speak to current circumstances. And it's it's a challenge, but it's not impossible by any means. And they used to do that regularly in the golden age of Hollywood, where they were making movies like Bells of St. Mary's and along with On the Waterfront. I mean, and weren't spending $300 million to do it.
Right. The pacing was different. What do you think about the pacing of, action movies are awesome. I love them. And action movies now are so much different than action movies were even in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, again, it comes back to no one does the technological side of movie making better than the Americans do. Well, North Americans, I'd say. I mean, it's just incredible. But I have a few thoughts about that. One is that that's true, but the stories aren't. The technology is not tied to the kind of dynamic story that would amplify these stories in an amazing way. Instead, it's actually used to sell products. So it's these tie-ins to McDonald's or you name it, and it's a big, huge marketing campaign. And if you talk about pacing, it's pacing for the ADD. And I don't think that's accidental. I think that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but a lot of people talk about this, and I think it's true. Our consumer culture now is the enemy of consumerism is solitude and quiet and self-reflection and contemplation. Those things are not conducive to selling products. But when you have this in your hand, I mean, what you can do to people to keep them distracted and wanting, because the more distracted we are, the more agitated we become, the less centered we are, and the more we want. The more we take in, the less we feel satisfied, and it's a vicious cycle that spins. And I'm not saying that people sit down in the boardroom in New York or LA and say we have them right where we want them, but there is a conspiracy of default, I think, when it comes to this, and they know their targets. I mean, the research that is done on behavior and the amount of nanoseconds you need to manipulate a person to switch pages and to divert their attention. I don't know. To me, it's a little sinister, and it's extremely effective in keeping people. I was talking to the president of a university because I was pitching an idea that we can talk about in terms of all this, and he said, we have really bright students here, really bright, and they're really engaged, but they're lonely. I mean, I've never seen a generation as lonely as these kids. And he said, I think it has a lot to do with, these constant distractions. And you're so distracted that you don't even realize that you're disconnected from yourself and your deepest self and your questioning self. When you were a kid, you went home from school and the sky was getting darker and you have a long way to walk. You'd be alone. You'd be alone with your thoughts. Mortality would be creeping in there. Who am I? What am I? Am I going to die? And all these kind of things would be a regular part of your thought process. Now you see kids coming home from school, the backpacks on, and like their head in the phone, and earplugs in, listening to music blasting, and it's like this kind of droney stuff, and it's like, this isn't healthy. And and they're doing studies. If people haven't heard of Nicholas, what's his name? Nicholas Carr. He's written some incredible stuff about the effects of technology, and it's not just conjecture. This is like stuff that's been studied through imaging technology. People's brains now are being rewired. I mean, and we're going back to a time where the rewiring is so distracted. It's more like a primitive mentality where you're constantly. It's like that. You're always on the look out for predators or whatever. That's that primitive kind of thing. It's discursive. It's not conducive to contemplation and all those things that gave rise to all the things we take for granted. The Constitution, the Pietà, the Eiffel Tower. All these works that come out of people being alone and wrestling with deep questions of existence, and out of that come these beautiful works of art. But I loved being a kid when I was little. I just loved it. I would not want to be a child today, and it's a sad thing to say. It's a really sad thing to say. Having to go through metal detectors to go into school, and there are so many things in the culture that are not consciously against you, but they make it so difficult to be a human being in the deepest sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're really onto something there. And Father Gregory Jensen, when we talked last week about St. Gregory's pastoral rule, he said, look, we got to take this, we got to turn isolation into solitude, right? And I know how much better I am as a man when my tendency is, there's so many good books to listen to. There are so many good podcasts, and I love learning. So my temptation is when I go for my morning, what used to be my morning run, now it's my morning walk, I used to listen to stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I'm missing out on some stuff. So now I don't do it at all. So I'm alone with my thoughts. And, you need that time. You got to have it. And you're right. And I don't think there's a conspiracy either. It's just this is our progress. Progress.
Yeah.
And one of the anecdotes to that that helps to keep us grounded, is a prayer rule, right? And we can talk about that later if you want. We can tie some of these things together. And also liturgy, right? Liturgy has its own story that it's telling, and it has its own pacing. And the pacing is not centered on, my distraction, my need for distraction. It's not. It's not focused towards me. I'm not the consumer. And it's not even right to say I'm really a participant. I'm an offerer, right? I'm offering something up. I'm offering praise. I'm offering, glory. And this is something when you watch people, and here we can't just talk about kids. It's all of us. If we are used to being, used to that dopamine hit, we've learned now that we touch our faces, a gazillion times a minute, right? I wonder how many times it is that we respond to our phones. We look at our phones as a culture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And, I hope we never get to the point where it's proper to look at your phone in liturgy. Right? Yes, it's convenient to have, here's my response. Yeah, sometimes I need to look stuff up, though. I need to get the Trapar or whatever. And our metropolitan, he knows that. He uses a phone. He's used it for psalms and stuff. But he also knows that, hey, if you bring that into worship, there's something that happens. So he's really got this, I don't want you doing that, right? I'm like, oh man, yeah, but all the services are right here. I can put on my iPad. I can just set my iPad right here next to the altar on my little stand here. And he's like, Father Anthony. And so all of us, liturgy is, it's not natural for us anymore. This idea for the next hour or two, it's not going to be about me. It's not going to be about my need for stimulus. It's going to be my participation in something transcendent, something beautiful, something that it pulls me outside of myself.
Right.
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 And right now we're missing that. I'm missing that because it reminds me of who I am.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done, that we've seen, is this combination, of our addiction to screens and our need for worship, right? Mm-hmm. So you sent me that article. Was it from the Post? Tell us about that.
Yeah. How does it start? I mean, it's a great open. It's let's see if I can find it on my thing here. Speaking of screens, because the opening line is great, and it's New York Post, and it's commenting. It's an article about what's happened to church quote attendance since they've shut the doors to the public. And the opening line of this New York Post article is, all they needed to do to boost mass attendance was to close the church doors. And so what they're saying here is that the people who are tuning into these live streams of the 10 o'clock Sunday liturgy at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, it's always been live streamed, and they would get, a couple of thousand people. Now they're getting 150,000 people. And that's just individual screens. So they're imagining there's probably at least double that of numbers of people who are actually watching alongside others. And they interview, I guess, the rector of the cathedral, and he says something to the effect of, this is not ideal, but, and so I think we have to step back and say, well, why is it not ideal? What's wrong with that? And I have a couple of ideas about that, but I think we as a church would really have to take that seriously. What do you say to somebody who says, hey, look, I love church. I can sit right here on my couch and attend Mass in the liturgy, and it's beautiful. So why do I have to get in my car and get down there and do all that? What's the point? I'm doing it right here. Well, there are a lot of things you could say about it. One of the first things that comes to my mind is that it's very easy to go from that to, well, you know what I'll do? Because it's Sunday and the Jets are playing the Dolphins. I really want to see that game. I will watch the first part of the liturgy up to the liturgy of the word. Then I'll watch the game, and at halftime I'll watch up to communion, and then when that halftime is over, I'll watch the rest of the mass or the liturgy. And so, you know, I mean, you could imagine that. And what that suggests is that, and this to me is really, really common. It reveals that in our minds, God is part of our lives. And you might say, well, sure he is. Isn't that great? And I would say, no, God is not part of our lives. God is our life. You know, this is God in whom we move, live, and have our being. And it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. God is not in some compartment that we pull out and access when we need, or rarely do we open that drawer to say thank you. But when God is it, and we are in that reality, that's a whole different way of viewing the world and our own lives and people around us. It's radically different. And you know, there are many things you could say about that, but it is something to build on. I mean, if people are interested enough to tune in to a liturgy live stream, there's something there. There's a hunger there, and we have to find a way to fan those embers and get that flame up and going. You know.
Yeah, so well said, right? Yeah, so you know, we look back with oh man, the good old days when the greatest show, the most popular show on Sunday evening, you know, was a Christian storyteller, and you know, so it's not good or bad. It's just you know, that cannot become the worship, and right now it's tough. So. And it, this is going to come out wrong, so maybe, you know, you can help me clean it up a little bit. So two of the ways that we, that I at least, and the church has taught me to become better, a little bit less concerned with myself, is through a prayer rule, and again through worship, right? And I think that if we had more of an appreciation for the role of prayer and home prayer, so we have this idea of the home as the little church, right? If that weren't just an idea, if it was part of our living experience of God in our lives, right? Us in God, Him in us, then when we looked for something, a way to fill that huge and difficult gap of being able to gather together during the week, and especially on Saturday night and Sunday in worship, and especially on Sunday around the Eucharist, our first reaction, our only reaction, would not be to let me find my favorite broadcast of it, right? And you know, the like you said, the services at St. Andrew's and at seminary are incredibly beautiful. I mean, those seminarians, you know, and they live together, so they're a home infectious unit, right?
Yeah,
so
I think great.
It's beautiful. It's so well done. It's not the liturgy. Right, it's beautiful, and because of my connection with them, because of my connection with what it is that they are doing, you know, I am drawn into that experience, right? But I would also have an instinct to, Typica, you know, Reader's Vespers, right? This experience of God with a face-to-face, shoulder-to-shoulder in the home church, right? This would also be a natural response to this, right? Mm-hmm. I can't be at church on Sunday, so of course I'm going to read the scripture, and we're going to sing the psalms, and we're going to sing the hymns. And I'm so thankful that we live in a time, this is a hard thing to go through, and I'm so thankful that we have this kind of technology that we're taking advantage of. We have, you know, Zoom, you know, has its problems, but it's fantastic, right? It allows us to not just weather this, but to come out stronger. But I'm also thankful that you don't need to have 10 sets of books in order to do Reader's Vespers on Saturday night, right? 20 years ago, that's what you needed. You needed to have all these books if you were going to do it. And you had to spend a lot of time to figure out, when do I read what? Well, now you can just go. If you know where to go on the internet, you can just go and you can say, they've put together the reader service for me. I just downloaded it. I start at the beginning. All I have to do is bring my family and my reverence. And we've got this experience of communal prayer. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So God bless the people who are putting that kind of content out. And the Antiochians make it so easy. You go to antiochian.org, and then you go to their liturgics section. And for Saturday and Sunday, they go ahead and they fold in the movable parts from the Octoikos and the Menaion into the service. And they've even done reader versions now. So you don't have to know how to translate priest parts into lay parts. It's awesome. And I wonder if they are getting the kind of downloads that we are getting views of live streams.
Huh. That would be interesting to look at, yeah. And the other thing, in a sense, what we're talking about right now is taking for granted or assuming that the people we're talking about are churched and know what things like the Typica are and reader service. But what about people who are turning into these streaming things and saying, this is beautiful, but I don't get it. Something about it is moving and lovely, but it's all, pardon the pun, it's all Greek to me. I think it'd be great if after some services, somebody could sort of, for the people who want to learn, say, I'll take questions live, or I'm reading questions that come to this email address, and let me take you through our liturgy and open these aspects of it up to you, and then, wow. Because when you begin to open those doors to people, I mean, I know in my own case, from the Latin church where, the beauty of the what they call the noble simplicity of the Latin rite. When I first started going to the Eastern liturgies, I'm telling you, it was like weeks. I would keep showing up, but I would literally white knuckle on the pew and going, "They're doing it wrong. Shouldn't have your back to us." I mean, we're way beyond that in the Latin church, And all these things I was finding wrong, I was keeping a score, But I would keep going back. And then there was one day, again, to use that scale falling from the eyes thing, one day, one of the layers of the curtains just opened, and I went, oh my God, this is unbelievable what's going on here. I mean, the depth and the richness. When you open the liturgy by saying, blessed is the kingdom of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, boom, you're off to the races. Those doors open. You're entering, as Schmemann says, you're on this pilgrimage, this procession upward. You're entering into the kingdom. It's like, it's a game changer, And then every aspect of it, it's so rich. It's just endlessly rich. But you need somebody to walk you through it, I was fortunate in the sense that I had some theological background, but for somebody who sees it, when we got married, there was a guy came to the wedding, a delightful guy, very, very bright guy, Jewish and professedly atheist. He came up to me after the wedding. He said, I was blown away by that service. He said it had how do you put it? The disorienting effect of great art. And I said, Larry, I'm gonna steal that if you don't mind. He said, no, go ahead, because there is something disorienting about it. It takes you. It's like, what is this? But so when people are there, they need a little bit of a guide, to say, well, this is what this is, and this is what this is, and then let them work it out for themselves. But I keep using this expression, it's a treasure hidden in plain sight. And we are wrong to not make that as accessible as humanly possible to people.
Beautiful, beautiful. And y'all, I'm sorry if you're watching. I'm sorry about my audio. I forgot to hit my unmute. So it was recording, so it'll be in the podcast version of this, but I just said something incredibly profound, life-changing. You just missed it now. So sorry about that. I had it muted on the instinct for home prayer, how much we need that as well. Yeah, that's a great point, you know. Let's make this beautiful, you know, story of the liturgy, right? We can go too far with that. I get that. Make it accessible. And I love teaching liturgies. I love teaching about liturgy. I've done retreats on it. I've been to retreats on it. You know, it's fantastic but you can make it dry. You can make it the most painful thing in the world, right? But if you share, look, this is what the story is. This is what's going on. And this is your role in it. Well, then it changes everything. It's no longer something to be endured, which liturgy is for many people. You know, we're wired in a certain way. That's why we're ordained. I mean, liturgy was one of the parts of my calling to the priesthood. Some people, they're like, yeah, I'm Christian, I'm Orthodox, but it's not because of the liturgy, right? And hey, I get that.
Yeah.
So
but in terms of all this stuff, in terms of like, I'm sure you're familiar with the great French Jesuit Henri de Lubac. He was a pioneer in what they call the ressourcement, which was going back to the sources of the fathers of the church. He was ecumenical in the best, deepest meaning of the word. Anyway, he wrote a book called Catholicism, Christ and the Common Destiny of Mankind. And it's an incredible book. But right in the beginning, he sort of says what his mission statement is in this book. And I love this because we need this badly. He says, my purpose has been simply to bring out clearly certain ideas that are inherent in our faith, ideas so simple that they do not always attract attention, but at the same time so fundamental that there is some risk of our not finding time to ponder them. I mean, this is so true. So many things we take for granted, things like sin, or even God. What is God? Who is God? Who is Christ? I mean, all the church, all these things we sort of take for granted and tend not to reflect on critically enough to keep them alive, because this is a mystery we don't control. You know what I mean? This is all relationship, and it's dynamic. And if you sort of feel you have some sort of control of it, you carry it around in a file box, it becomes dead.
Right, yeah. And to bring us back, because we've only got a couple of minutes to circle around, we can't put this in a box. We can describe our encounter with it. And we can do that through story. Right? That's how we relate it to people, is through story. And growing up, that was very much a part of the Christian experience growing up in the South, was the witness. You know, this is what God has done for me in my life, right? You would have your testimony. And we avoid that, it seems to me, in the Orthodox Church. But I think we need to have people know their story. Tell your story. Share your stories with each other. Because it's beautiful. One of the things, my favorite things among all the other 100 about being a priest, is that I am called to collect people's stories, and I am privileged to be a part of that story. I help them learn the story about their relationship with God through Christ. This is huge, and it's a great honor, and it's a great blessing. And Deacon Timothy, it's been a great blessing to be here with you and let people hear just a little bit about your story and about your love of God and your love of Christ. And, it's awesome. And
well, thank you. When I was telling somebody I was going to be doing this, I remembered that I came to this church through your podcasts. I mean, I was aware of certain people that didn't quite put together with the church. I mean, theologians and other people I liked, but it was the good guys who wear black that I was like, well, I like this guy, and that's why I reached out to you.
Yeah,
So you're doing some good stuff.
That's
Padre.
when our stories got together. Was there in Allentown at St. Michael's?
Yep.
I mean St. Mary's Pekrova in Allentown, and it's a great blessing to be in the same story with you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's a story. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll do this again. Right?
Okay. Thank you.
Y'all heard that. Y'all heard that, right? Okay. Well, y'all, until next time. Oh, wait, my kids told me. They said to say this. They're supposed to give me a script, but I'm supposed to say something like, hey, be sure you subscribed to this channel, Father Anthony Perkins. Ring the bell, and if you liked it, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. We don't do it for that. We do it because we love you. But that's part of the script. So until next time, Godspeed.
Right.
All right. So only